Looks intact. So the thing is, I just started recording like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Only to capture the sounds of the environment and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I'm gonna do, like going to everyone's seat and kind of record the things that are going on. And right now, the things that are going on here is just that the semester is finished.
Yeah.
And then we're helping the diplomas.
Yeah.
So the surrounding sounds are actually the people are working for the diplomas. And even if you listen carefully, you can just hear the sound of 3D printers and all that stuff. And yeah, spray.
Yeah, here's some spray. You can hear the whirring of the computer.
Yeah, exactly. And something exceptionally happened, and that's that half of the studio doesn't have electricity.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a fuse problem, I don't know. But yeah, I actually don't have a clear idea of how I'm going to start this, but I think we can just straightly go to the questions themselves. Like, right now the semester is finished, and you're the new guy here, like the first semester, new entry. You got your first finished, so for the first question I'm gonna ask is that what was the approach of the studio during the semester, and what was the issue that you were working on mainly?
I'm not going to try and repeat the brief, I guess.
Yeah, don't.
But in terms of like the studio, maybe it's not about the approach, but about what we felt as a studio that seemed different to the last. Maybe that was an emphasis on doing, and so I felt like we did a lot, which was good. I feel like Sam pushed an idea of thinking less, producing more, but learning from the things that you make, which is very interesting, especially in the drawings about drawings and the models about drawings. It was super fun. And then it was nice to then get a bit of space to breathe at the end of the term where we actually put together a project. Albeit in a short amount of time, and I wish we had longer, but at the same time there was something quite fun about that. And for me, working in groups was cool. Prior to coming to Angevanta, I didn't have that much experience working in groups, especially for like university projects. A little bit of work, but less so in the academic setting. So that was a learning curve too. I mean, we've worked together for the whole year.
Yeah.
So maybe it wasn't so good, but let's see.
For me, it's exceptional. It was exceptional, and who knows? Maybe we shall continue. Yeah. So, do you find it like? Do you find this whole thing aligned to what you expected before coming to Angevanta?
From Angevanta or from the studio?
The studio. I mean, generally Angevanta, because you had some expectations from this institute, and specifically from this studio itself. The fact that it had a bit of a change of administration. So I want to know if like your desires or your expectations are aligned to what we did this semester.
I didn't know what to expect coming into the course, and I think I knew less what to expect with it being Sam. I think I've been surprised with the things that I've gravitated towards, and so I've had quite an open mind coming into it anyway. But at the end of one semester, would say that the things that we've done that I've enjoyed the most wouldn't have been things that I enjoyed or said I would have enjoyed the most at the start. But that's been cool. For example, I think the drawings about drawings, I would have said I'd have loved the drawing side of it before, because I'm very interested in drawing. But then I think it wasn't necessarily the drawing part that I found the most interesting. It was more the theoretical part of it that I found more interesting. And so in that capacity, it's been a nice surprise. And I also think that it was interesting doing a building project with 3 other people, again, in a short amount of time, but at the end of the semester, because I think if we had been given that building project at the beginning of the semester, we would have done it very differently. And so even subconsciously it shows there's been a bit of growth there.
Exactly.
Because I think we all designed in a slightly different way, we all thought about things in a slightly different way, and we all end up making something in a very slightly different way than I think we would have done at the beginning, which was cool.
You're right. I remember like during, I think it was like mid-semester or something, that we were all confused about the whole approach, or what we're doing right now. Is this something that, I don't know, the professor expects us to do, or is it like the real thing? Is it like the real architecture? What are we doing? We kind of at some point felt like we're like a live AI system that we're working towards a simple goal. So I remember that confusion as well. But now I kind of feel the same thing as you do. Like, this whole process was leading us towards something to learn. Yeah, I guess. But you talk about interests. What can you talk about more of those interests of yours? Like, you said you were interested in drawings. Can you talk more about that?
I think from the I think I'm one that I had an interest in making drawings beforehand, which then we did loads of, which was cool. I think something that's been quite interesting, especially in the building project, was this idea of like signs, and also in many ways caricatures of buildings, and so designing the most drive-through or the most MOT. It was almost interesting to carry out an architectural exercise without thinking too much about it being a building that people would live in or experience or use. And I think there's definitely a place for everything within architectural education. Like we should design buildings that can be used, and we should think about realities of things. But over 4 weeks, it was cool to think very hypothetically and in a way, in a very extreme way, in order to sort of like rephrase how we think that neutral zone looks. And so by thinking about sort of like the most direct way of representing an MOT garage, we were able to say something a little bit about, I don't know, like the way people act with cars, or the way people use cars, or the rituals of caring for your objects. I also think I had never, prior to coming to this studio, explored too much of the whole Venturian, Denise Scott Brown, postmodern way of designing. Not because maybe not because I was naturally drawn to it, but also because of its, I don't know, my tutors in the past hadn't taught it in the same way. And so it was quite nice in many ways, even if I've only taken small amounts of it into the things that I think about. Being quite nice being exposed to both Sam and then maybe Giacomo, who obviously live by that sword a little bit more than maybe I do at the moment. And so you do pick up little bits and get exposed to new things. And it'll be interesting to see how that evolves, because I think the studio's also felt a little bit of teething, probably, in kind of working out what it is and who it is in the context of the Angeventer. So you had a very sort of like established regime of Hani Rashid here, and we still saw 2 years of people that had experienced that, and on paper and in practice and on screen, Hanny and Sam are very different in their work. And so I think there was obviously going to be some misunderstandings of the initial brief. But it's been quite interesting to see how that's matured and how people have taken that on, and in some ways how that's sort of combined with an integrated way of designing. But I think at some point it was very confident from Sam and very bold to come in with like a completely different, like we're not allowed to use procedural tools, we're now going back to the collage, we're looking at text opposed to designing sort of like cities. And that was a very confident move, but at some point I could see the compromise converging a bit, and it'll be interesting to see how this Sam Jacobs stuff goes forward over the next year, 2 years.
Yeah, exactly. As the first semesters, I think, as the first semester, I think we all witnessed this confusion, especially among the people that were here longer than anyone, like the pre-diplomas and the diplomas, that they are a bit more struggling in order to find out, in order to really get themselves aligned to the new administration or to the new tutors and all that stuff. But talking about this change, you spoke about your previous tutors. Can you give us a quick background of the place that you come from, like AA?
No,
or Bartlett. Bartlett. Yeah.
Key difference there.
Key difference. Why did I say Bartlett? Oh, AA. Oh, because it's in London as well.
Yeah, it's also in London. Yeah. I did some teaching there, so maybe that was it.
Oh yeah.
It's actually interesting. So the Bartlett was a very sort of like drawing-based school as well, I'd say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was that would be its ethos generally, but one of the units I was in especially was a sort of more drawing-orientated unit. And so I remember leaving bachelor's having almost a discontent to an extent for the production of images. And then it was funny coming back and it being so drawing focused again. Because in some ways you see it in education and practice that sort of the production of images distorts the way that a building is made, because you end up designing an image rather than the space. But in many ways it's been interesting analysing drawings as a vehicle for architectural thought rather than architectural representation, because I think maybe it's the world of the render and the 3D view that is more where I think some of that economy of images was starting to lead with the whole Bartlett thing.
Yeah.
Key differences, I'd say, is the group work thing on a very sort of basic level.
You used to work like not as a group there.
Yeah, we used to work very much on our own with all the projects, which is amazing for sort of developing a project that you know every single bit about, and you get to research and almost decide yourself. And so it becomes as much a development of a building as a development of self. But then I think there's a lot of other skills that are gained from working with others. But I would say it's I think the masters, bachelors way around also makes a lot of difference too.
For you, it seems it's not that much difference because you said you were working on drawings there as well. But the real game changer thing for you is the group work here.
A little bit. I think it's hard to compare because in the Bartlett as well we had sort of the unit system too, and so my second year I had a very computational year with a guy called Barry Watt, and so it was a very sort of biophilic Houdini-led brief, but then also discussed ideas of like the object and the picturesque, and I had a very big interest in hand drawing, and he helped me synthesize a brief for myself that was somewhere in between the analog and the digital. Which also used like elements of AI, and so in that respect, he was very sort of understanding of my interests, but then somehow fused it with the interests of his own, which was very cool. And then there was also this ecological agenda within that studio that then made it very relevant to today, even if maybe some of the outputs didn't seem conventionally architectural. But then my third year was in a sort of more narrative-led studio, and so designed like a data centre by the Bank of England that was themed around the ideas of Alice in Wonderland. And so it was a lot more sort of fictional, but no less about reality. And so in that respect, again, it was the use of stories and the use of analogies to kind of like tell your idea in a much more consumable way. But then the output was a very 2D thing, and also compounded with COVID, which I think was like the rise of Zoom and the digital portfolio made everything that was worth anything two-dimensional. And so we all made digital drawings that, where once they might have been hand drawings, but hand drawings scan a lot less well on your phone. And so naturally you move away from them a little bit when you're stuck in your bedroom. But it was a very different attitude, I think, to the way that Sam is looking at drawings. And I think that sort of opens up discussion for like there also being a taste thing and also a movement thing of the drawings that you like. And so, for example, even us getting given 100 references by Sam at the beginning.
Yeah, we had to choose.
Well, yeah, we had to choose from some references we were given. But none of those references maybe that were in Sam's 100 would have been in Pascal Bronner's or Thomas Hillier's 100 they gave us in Unit 7. And so in that way, the history of drawings is directing you in a very different way.
Yeah, fair, totally, yeah. I mean, just spoke about Barry Work, which is not a strange name to Angewandte. You know that. Maybe we'll have him here again in the future as well.
Maybe.
So yeah, we know that this Studio 3 got a little bit of a change in terms of professors. And the fact that the 2 other studios are going to do that as well in the near future.
Yeah.
So speaking about future, how do you perspective, or how can you imagine yourself in the next 2 years, like during your graduation or something like that?
How can I imagine myself?
Yeah, I mean, how can
Brown
you imagine?
hair.
No, not yourself. Not actually yourself, but this 3 studios overly. Like what? Because there is an approach of the IOA that they're like changing this star architecting toward another direction. But I just want you to speculate, kind of, to see if you can just say or. What do you say about someone? Predict, yeah. To predict how this future will be. Like, what are they working?
I have no idea.
Right now.
I have no idea who the next professors will be. And so
No, of course.
I can't make a judgment on that.
But you know the whole approach of the 3 studios. We were supposed to work on urban development and all that stuff. But they're working on something else, and then they're working on narratives and all that.
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting. I can only talk from like a Sam Jacob studio perspective, but it'll be interesting to see how the studio sort of mentalities and manifestos combine with what is always a technological fascination of a student. And so a student, I feel, always wants to present their work in the most contemporary way, use the most contemporary tools, so like computational software, or what that is, because I think it becomes quite like attractive to make nice looking things. And so it'll be interesting to see how sort of the preoccupation with learning new ways of rendering or new ways of modeling or new ways of making stuff combines with 3 established modes of thinking about stuff. So, for example, Sam's agenda that arguably could be seen to be stemming from his work with fat, or at least a postmodern attitude towards contemporary architecture, how that then fuses with more sort of like contemporary means of making stuff. And then maybe we'll start to see where that attitude to the post-digital comes out in Sam's work. Because at the moment, I'm yet to sort of understand that fully.
Yeah, it's been only one semester. Let's see what the next semester will bring.
Exactly. Let's see.
Yeah. Very cool. So cool. Good discussion, John. Let's do it tomorrow. Yeah, thank you. That's all I needed.
Cool. Where's that going? Where are you going to post that?
I still don't know, and I'm still not stopping it. But first I gotta evaluate it in terms of quality. To see if it's like acceptable to do this in this surrounding environment. Because you know I care about sound.
Brian Eno over there.
And I wanted to know if it's in a good circumstances, or let's say in a good condition to post it somewhere. Otherwise, I mean, if the content was good, then we can do it another time, like in a quiet place, to have the standard situation. But I'm not looking actually for standard situation. Just want to really convey or transform this vibe that we're experiencing right now. And the fact that I'm talking about past and the future is just these are just the questions that I'm concerned with. So I wanted to ask the first semesters, the last semesters, like diplomas and pre-diplomas, the ones that are more concerned with the change of administration. And then, yeah, I'm just gonna make a data set of it, maybe.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that will come in handy, I guess. If it doesn't, it's just a joyful conversation with my people.
Yeah, I mean, that's super cool, man.
Yeah, let's do that then. But thanks again.
No worries.